What's up, Sushi Squad? We back in small Trove. Thank you all so much for your patience. I know I should have tackled this a couple days ago, but what can I say? You know, a couple days ago, you guys might have noticed I put out like 6 or 7 videos in a day, and it was a lot more taxing than I thought because I felt good, but then I was just exhausted. Pretty much these past few days has literally just been me sleeping, waking up and eating, maybe streaming once, and then going back to bed. But now I'm feeling good. Now we're back to it. So let's get into it. So there's actually, you know how we ended up having a video talking about the new class abilities, that are new class modifiers coming to the Trove classes. So this is all on the test server. And it turns out that we've actually got even more abilities for a bunch of the other characters. So we got like Knight, you know, Bard again for whatever reason. Yeah. And if you guys want to always, you know, be on top of all of these things, you can always subscribe, notification bell, blah, blah, blah. You know how it is. YouTube things. Yeah. Consider dropping a like too if you find it interesting. So anyways, there's been additional patches. There was one on the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th. Just skimming through them very briefly, it seems like most of all, it's a lot of these are related to the delves. Again, this is all on the test server, so a lot of it is subject to change. Keep that in mind. But the fact that they're pouring so much attention into the new delves has me worried that these new rings, or more specifically the modifiers in whatever form they end up taking in the full game, are going to end up requiring us to go into these new delves and grind the same as we would grind anything else in the game, which would be very disappointing, frankly speaking, just because, I mean, we've all kind of agreed that we don't, unanimously, nobody likes the delves. Some of you guys I know in the comments are going to sound off, I like it, but you got to agree that it could be better. Okay, even if you don't absolutely loathe the delves like the majority of us do. And I was actually thinking about it earlier. This is just a random little tangent here before we get into the class stuff, and I'm sorry I'm rambling. But I was thinking, man, you know, we've talked about it in live streams how cool it would be if the delves was an infinite Shadow Tower dungeon or something. And then one of my buddies ended up actually bringing up the idea where he was having a conversation with his friend, talking about how lame it is in games to end up having a ceiling, to end up, you know, it feels very claustrophobic, and I completely agree with that. And I think that that's why the delves just doesn't really feel that good. And so it made me actually think, wouldn't it be cool if they ended up making the delves more so something like this, where it would be floating platforms and generally just be like, maybe to avoid lag where you would rubber band through the floor, you could put in, the devs could put invisible walls or something around. Or quite literally, think about it this way. Think of a delve cave, but instead the walls and the ceiling are still there to block players' escape, but they're invisible blocks so that you can actually see the sky block. I don't know. I just wanted to put that idea out there just because I thought that that would be pretty darn interesting, and it would actually feel more like a proper end game area. But anyways, I know most of you guys don't care. So we ended up actually getting new class abilities for most of the characters that didn't have the class modifiers, and then we also have some class modifiers for classes that already did have modifiers, which makes me wonder, like, we actually have one for the Neon Ninja and the Bard, which makes me wonder whether or not we're going to have multiple modifiers per each character, or is this right here still the devs testing and getting feedback, and these are basically replacements to the original ones? Because if you guys ended up checking out my other video, the Neon Ninja, for example, has the float like a butterfly, where when you use your ultimate ability, you end up getting a slow fall effect. And what I'm trying to argue is that maybe this new ability is quite literally replacing this one, and the full game may never see this float slow fall ability. Who knows? Maybe each character is going to end up gaining multiple abilities. I don't know. It would be pretty cool. But anyways, we got Revenant up first. So the Revenant actually has Spirit Spears no longer slow. Let me actually see. Where is it? Where is it? So there's the Revenant one. And what that's going to do is make it so I don't have movement speed build or anything like that. Okay, keep that in mind. But we can use our number 1 without getting slowed down, which is insane. Okay, I didn't think that it was going to end up being that crazy at first, but then when I started thinking about it, that means that the Revenant with this modified ability, becomes a character that you can main both in terms of a damage dealer or a tank in the delves, but also speed farming dungeons. Now, not to say that the Revenant can end up being like a super speedy farmer or something like that, but the fact that you could have full movement speed gear and now actually see the benefit of that, because your Spirit Spears combined with your basic attack is basically going to be the bread and butter of the Revenant, since it's reworked like a year or two ago, where that's going to end up being the majority of your damage. And so the Revenant has always been able to kill things quite effectively. Not necessarily like full-on bosses, but you make up for it with the survivability, right? Because there's like a life leech on the Revenant's abilities and so on, but I'm not trying to get into all of that today. The point is that I think that this is really cool because it means that Revenant mains can actually have full movement speed gear and actually do dungeon farming without having the Spirit Spears slow us down to a snail's crawl and thus messing up your speed farming capabilities. So that's really cool. I like that. And it also makes me a little bit disappointed that, excuse me, that the Shadowhunter's ability is still so lackluster. Like, they really gotta... It's weird because it's like some abilities are outright better and change the character for the good. I think most of all, it seems to be the class modifiers that end up using one of the abilities that you were already using, like Neon Ninja, and how we'll get into his ability a little bit later. But basically it, you know, even the slow fall, that I would argue is really good for speed farming, but it does require to use your ultimate ability, which is something that you don't necessarily want. Or like how Shadowhunter, his modified ability makes it so that you get a damage boost when you end up doing a fully charged right click attack, but that's not really Shadowhunter's gameplay. So what I would like to see is a modifier that ends up changing your base attack or even your #1 ability, something that Shadowhunters actually use, instead of pushing an ability that nobody wants to use at the idea to make that ability more valuable. So that's why I'm trying to, lo and behold, the point that I'm making is that the Revenant has a great modified ability because it doesn't make your shield bash better or something like that. It actually works in tandem with how you actually play the character, rather than trying to force you to use other mechanics, which I'm not saying forcing you to use other mechanics is inherently a bad thing. It's just, it's not fun on most of the characters in Trove. So anyways, I don't mean to ramble. So let's talk about the Draco now. So Draco's got Dragon Force, which I love the reference because Dragon Force is actually a phenomenal band. Where is it? All the way at the end, huh? So this one, summon 2 Draco allies when you use your ultimate ability, which... I mean, it's good and bad. This is one of those ones where it's passable. You know, it's not awful. It's not like it's a negative. It just kind of enhances what's already there. But it doesn't turn any heads. It's not like, oh my god, now I can use this character exponentially. Like, it doesn't really matter, because basically the Draco's end game is just throw down a bomb, blow it up, there's your ally. The point is you want to end up having your maximum amount of babies at a time, which is going to end up being 6. So you're spending all of your energy to spawn all of these bombs and so on and so forth. But the amount of time that it takes to get all of the babies, to get your maximum damage with the Draco, that can kind of end up being a bit of the problem. So now that our ultimate ability can summon 2 babies, not additional, you can only still summon 6 total, means that basically you would go into a dungeon or start fighting a boss and you could use your ult right away to end up getting 2 babies, and then you start focusing on using your bombs and so on and so forth. So the amount of time that it would take for the Draco to put his most optimal amount of damage out ends up decreasing, like the amount of time. So again, it's good, not great. I would like to see something a little bit more interesting, but I guess whatever. The funny thing too is that summon 2 Draco allies when using the ultimate. If I'm not mistaken, like the when burnt offering down, yeah, so that means that this modified ability is useless unless you have your class gem, which is kind of strange because they've actually done a really good job of making all of these modified abilities. None of them have required your class gem ability, so that's an odd one. I feel like that's not gonna cut it unless, of course, it requires you to end up having your class gem ability in the first place to have the modifier. I don't freaking know. But anyways, we've got the Knight class ability, or Knight modified ability next, which is using charge grants a temporary movement speed increase. Now, once again, this is interesting because your charge changes when you end up using your class gem ability. But again, this is something that will actually see the benefit of whether you use your class gem ability or not, because it means that we're not only going to be able to use, like when you don't have your class gem ability, it dashes forward, right? Which is a pretty fun ability, albeit kind of useless in the grand scheme of things. But being able to dash and then get a movement speed ability on top of it is pretty nice. However, if you want to have all of your end game damage as the Knight, it means that you have to have your class gem ability. Which means we can actually use, oops, I don't even have a weapon. We can use our number 1, and now we actually get an additional movement speed ability, which seems to last a pretty decent amount of time. It's actually funny, it shows the movement speed buff in the top left with a short little image right there that's oddly using like Bard assets. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that that movement speed seems to last a pretty decent amount of time, which means that Knight, this I like. This is a great ability because, again, this is something that you'll already be doing on the Knight anyways, and makes it so that you could actually use this character for speed farming. Once again, it's not going to end up being as efficient as the Neon Ninja. Nothing is as efficient as the Neon Ninja after you'll see these changes that are going on with this update. But I still appreciate the idea that a lot of the characters that are kind of really low tier are being brought up a bit. You know, like even doing something like this, it's a very small change, but having that movement speed and having it something that you can consistently put on your character at all times by just using an ability that you're already using anyways, means that the Knight ends up becoming a character that you can, and not only you can main it, you always could, but now people might actually want to. And that's, again, something that I can appreciate. So we actually got a Bard, Vanguard ability as well. Sorry, not Bard. Let me actually get my fists off of this guy, because for some reason I don't seem to have them on my Vanguard. So this ability, where the heck is it? This is going to end up being your energy blast now applies the same damage increase that your eye lasers apply. I don't understand this. I think it says energy blast now applies the same damage increase that I don't understand this, because there's literally no ability that's called there's no ability called energy blast. I can only assume that they're talking about in ranged mode the plasma blast. That's all I can end up assuming. And basically it seems like what they're trying to say, I could be wrong about this, just the explanation is so god awful. I think what they're trying to say is the modified ability literally makes it so that your right click in ranged mode is as strong as your laser when you're in melee mode. Is that what they're trying to say? Because if that's the case, devs, no. Like, just remove that ability. That's extremely lackluster and doesn't play to any of the strengths of the Vanguard. Once again, this is kind of like Game Ago has had this theme, which I don't entirely disagree with. But they've had this theme of trying to make it so that you will use more of the abilities of a character. So this is kind of their solution to use ranged mode, right? But there's two different types of ways that they've gone about this. There's things like the Chloromancer rework, where you are doing the most optimal amount of damage by using all of your abilities. And then there's the way that they dealt with the Shadowhunter's modified ability or the Vanguard's modified ability, where it almost feels like an insignificant boost. It's almost like they're trying to, like, see, you do want to use this ability, when it's like, no, I really don't. I still don't want to use it. And even though this could end up being the same amount of damage as my right click laser in melee mode, I would still end up using melee mode. You want to know why, devs? You want to know why everybody uses melee mode in the Vanguard? Because our number 1 ability gives us not only AoE damage, but it gives us movement speed. All this game is about is the movement speed. So try again. That Vanguard ability sucks. Again, though, it could be a completely different ability. The explanation to it, I frankly don't understand what they're even trying to explain, and I don't understand why they would even make an ability like that. So anyways, if somebody knows, like, the ability is completely different, you can let me know in the comments, and I'll appropriately absorb that information. So anyways, Trickster, now this one's actually a really interesting one. I don't main Fae. I've never really liked Fae particularly, but I know that there's those of you out there that appreciate the character for what it is. The Fae Trickster has the Mobilize ability. So Fairy Dance summons one large enchanted staff that follows the player. So this changes your ultimate ability, and this is kind of an in-between, where it's not as bad as the Shadow Hunter, where you're forced to use an ability that you don't otherwise use, because Fae Trickster most definitely does end up using your ultimate. But generally speaking, if you're speed farming or something, you're not really doing it. It might end up, being a lot more useful now, though, because the fact is that you don't end up using your ultimate very often, before this modified ability, because of the fact that you would end up placing down your ultimate and then you just move on to the next dungeon. Whereas now, it summons a big staff that actually follows you around, and because it's actually under the same code as an ally, if I'm not mistaken, it'll teleport up to us, right? Yeah, it does. Cool. So that is insane. It seems to last a absurdly long time. How long does it last? Is this just permanent? It seems to last the entire duration of our cooldown with our ultimate ability. So that completely changes his ult. Can I summon more than one? What? Okay, so it doesn't last an infinite amount of time, but it does seem to last the entire duration. How many of these can I summon at a time? Because this is another big game-changing ability, because it means that the Chloromancer could end up having god tier damage just because you would basically be spamming flasks to get as many of these stupid things going on at a time. You could literally... Here's what you would do if you were in a Leviathan group or something and you're on the Fae Trickster. You would end up using an origin portal to go back to spawn so you could get the rejuvenation station. And then what you would basically be doing, I guess, is just spamming flasks? Yeah. So you would just be spamming your flasks trying to get as many of these as possible. Let's see how many we can end up getting. Can we get up to 6, I'm assuming? That's 4. I think one of them already despawned, so I could be wrong. Okay, so we seem to have 4. 4 is the maximum. Okay. Jesus, dude. So depending on how much damage these suckers end up actually doing, that could end up being really, really good. And once again, you would end up just making sure that you're at a rejuvenation station so you could get 4 of them at a time. And Fae Trickster go burr, apparently. Boss killer, let's go. That's pretty crazy. That's a real crazy change for the Fae Trickster. That's actually really, really cool and useful. Okay, let me see if I can actually see damage numbers on an enemy. Get over here. Shoot. Come on. Shoot it! 10 mil. I mean, I don't have an optimal Fae Trickster right now, but that's that's a decent amount of damage on top of everything. Okay, cool. I mean, the staff seems to be pretty stupid, but that's just because the AI in this game is pretty god-awful. But either way, that's a very welcome change. That is a game changer. That completely changes how you would end up playing the character. Maybe not necessarily so much in terms of farming dungeons, but at the least you could have one of these things out while you're wandering around and doing dungeons and stuff like that. Maybe 2 of them if you're cranking through your flasks, but I just like the fact that it casts and lasts for the entirety of the cooldown. That's really nice. So then we've actually also got Dino Tamer. Dino Tamer's got an ability here, guys, which is pretty cool. So Deep Wounds applies a damage taken increase debuff to enemies dealt damage by Dino Tamer and their Dino summons. Does the in-game description explain this better? Damage increase debuff to Jesus Christ, devs, have you ever played any other video game? Seriously. This lowers the defense of enemies so that they end up taking more damage. But for some reason it's so freaking wordy, and just that needs to be a better description. So basically it makes it so that when your Dino babies damage an enemy, the enemy will end up getting an armor debuff so that they take more damage from everybody. Okay, there. I solved your math equation, devs. Not that we'll be able to necessarily test it out here. I'm at 29k. Okay, let's go to U9. I shouldn't one-shot these enemies. I want to see how significant this debuff is going to be, and does it benefit everybody? Because if this just applies to the enemy and then everybody can end up seeing the benefit of it, it means that Dino Tamer suddenly becomes actually like, you'll want to have one Dino Tamer at the least when you're fighting like Leviathans and stuff, if this can end up actually applying a defensive debuff to enemies, right? So let's throw down this guy, and then, so he did 4.5 mil, still 4.5 mil. So I'm doing 1.8 to 1.9. Is that the debuff then? Let me actually see. So if I'm shooting an enemy, it's 1.8. That was because of lunacy. Let me swap off of lunacy just because. Sorry, guys. So we're doing 1.81. And then if I use a Dino Baby, now I'm suddenly doing 1.9. So we get 100k more damage there. That's a pretty... I mean, I guess it's alright. What is that, like 20% or something, or maybe even only like a 5% or something, I don't know. But I mean, if it ends up working on bosses, again, that'll be a significant debuff, so long as you have other people complementing with all of their damage and stuff like that, if it's something that can end up in fact affecting everybody on the field, right? So anyways, we're already moving on to the Neo Ninja and then the Bard. So the Neo Ninja's ability, as you saw previously, is going to end up being the Slow Fall, which I don't know whether or not this ability is being outright removed when this update ends up going to the live server. We'll have to wait and see. But the new ability is even better. So this is 3 Flip. So what this is going to do is, using Shadow Flip now generates all 3 shurikens, which... work with me here, okay? Technically speaking, you don't need this ability, and it's not necessarily better than the slow fall per se, because you're already going to be backflipping like a crazy person to get to the next dungeon anyways. And with this update, the Neo Ninja gets the ability where when you do a backflip, you generate a shuriken. So chances are by the time you get to a dungeon, you're going to have all 3 shurikens, and you'll be able to kill anything in a dungeon so long as you end up shooting all 3 shurikens. What this ends up doing, making Neo Ninja a boss killer. Suddenly, not only can we end up using the Neo Ninja's abilities to snare bosses indefinitely, but we can also do optimal damage with every single backflip. So I would have to wait and see what people say about this, but generally speaking, that means that Neo Ninja might, with this one change alone, gotten bumped up to a much higher tier, and not only is guaranteed the fastest speed farmer in the game because you can consistently do the max amount of damage, and the slow fall is really nice and stuff like that as well, but the fact that you can consistently throw out your ultimate shurikens, which does a significant amount of damage. I mean, Neo Ninja is actually top tier in terms of speed farming and boss killing. Like, obviously he's not gonna do as much damage as, say, like a Chloromancer or maybe even necessarily Gunslinger and so on and so forth, but the fact that they actually are making all of these changes, like the thing that I find so frustrating about the whole situation is it's like Neo Ninja didn't need a buff but he's getting the best ones, like, it's like, dude, I want these kinds of game-changing abilities on the other characters. Like, so help me, dude. So anyways, there's the Bard ability. So this is going to end up being the new ability. So the old ability made it so that you would teleport to where your flower is. I don't know why it's not. But anyways, we've got the new ability right here. So what this is going to do is make it so that Peaceful Song buff reduces damage done to allies. Useless. Absolutely useless. The amount of mods that they're putting on the Bard is just terrible, dude. I mean, not that it matters because you guys on console don't even have the Bard yet, but basically that's going to end up being the Peaceful Song, which is... Oh, the reason I wasn't teleporting was because I didn't have a weapon. That's so weird that that is tied specifically to having a weapon. So anyways, yeah, this is going to make it so that when you use the Peaceful ability, which is going to end up being that one right there, which is the heal buff, it's going to make it so that we take reduced damage, which... can you actually hit me there, dude? Okay, so I went down to like 470k, let's say. And my full health is 527. So maybe... I took like 100k damage, if that. No, it wasn't 100k. 50k, something like that. Whatever. Let's get hit by another normal enemy, not a boss. Thank you very much. Hit me. Hit me, please. Come on. Doing. Wow, I saved 20k health. I went to 450k without it, and then with it, I went down to 470k. Devs, stop. Just stop. Like, I don't know why they keep trying to add these defensive buffs to the characters in the game, not realizing, literally, devs, the end game of Trove makes it so that you don't have more than 500k health, okay? And especially on a bard character, which is built as a DPS, like, I would like to see something like a damage reduction buff on, I don't know, like maybe it would end up helping if you had somebody in your party that was actually trying to be tanky, but there's no reason to be tanky, especially as all of these abilities are just making damage the most optimal way to play these classes anyways. So it's just, I don't know. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it. Sorry that I ended up going on so many tangents today, but I wanted to go through these abilities organically with you and kind of, you know, just share my experiences with them, share my opinions about them, and so on and so forth. And well, generally speaking, the majority of them, A+. These are great additions to the game. They completely change some of the characters. But generally speaking, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to see a good change to the Lunar Lancer. I want to see Boomeranger get a nice ability, you know, because the current ability is a little bit lackluster. I would love to see Shadowhunter actually get something useful. And we haven't seen Ice Sage either. I think there's a couple other characters that are probably missing buffs as well. I don't know, but we'll slowly see them over time, which is really cool. Now, last but not least, I gotta mention, just because I always get the comments, we don't know when the Bard's coming on consoles, and heck, we don't even know when the Chloromancer rework is coming on to consoles. But for those of you that are playing on PC, you might want to check out a new mod by Symbol. I think I got that right. Check this out. We actually have a mini-map that doesn't go away while we're doing dungeons now. That's insane that they figured out how to code that. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel. And have yourselves a fantastic day.